Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got a Tyranids video for you today. Now we've done this video quite recently for Necrons on this channel. This time we're going to replicate it with Tyranids. Basically we're going to go through all 6 of the detachments and I'm going to talk about my top 5 units from each detachment. Just my opinion of course, nothing more than that, just from my experiences and my meta. So before we do guys, just make sure you are subscribed to this channel, especially if you are a Tyranids actual player or just you're thinking about maybe collecting Tyranids. And of course if you are from Necrons and all that stuff, just give me a thumbs up. Now what I'm going to do guys is these are not going to be in any particular order, it's just a 5, it's not a top ranked 5, any old 5. We're going to kick this off with the Invasion Hive Fleet. Now the Invasion Hive Fleet has got the hyper adaptations options where all game you've either got Swarming Instincts for sustained hits 1 against infantry and swarm, you've got hyper aggression for lethal hits against monsters and vehicles, or Hive Predators against characters you get precision. That's all on critical hits by the way. Right, so let's get into this 5 for the Invasion Hive Fleet. The first pick I've got for you is the Hive Tyrant. Now the Hive Tyrant of course has Will of the Hive Mind, so you've got a free battle tactic stratagem for a unit within 12, which is great, it's nice. For example, let's just grab the stratagems out. Could be Rapid Regeneration, which I think is probably the best stratagem there. That is a battle tactic stratagem. So you can get a 6+ foe no pain save, but it will turn to a 5+ if you've got within synapse range. So basically a 5+ foe no pain save, put it on himself. That's really good, just 1 CP in a phase. You've got Adrenal Surge, which is really good and useful for a number of units really, but that is also battle tactic. So you're going to get 5+ critical hits on 2 units within his synapse. So again, that's going to work really well with the detachment rule, whether you're going for lethal hits, whether you're going for sustained hits. Now you're going to get them on 5s, not 6s. There's also some good enhancements for a Hive Tyrant in the Invasion Fleet. You've got probably the best of the bunch of that, Adaptive Biology. Adaptive Biology, the 5+ foe no pain save just as standard, or a 4+ if he's injured. So that's probably better than spending Will of the Hive Mind on the Hive Tyrant, so it means you can use maybe Rapid Regeneration on another unit, because he's going to have his own inbuilt Adaptive Biology. And there's also Synaptic Linchpin, which you can mention here, which is useful for some stratagems. I mean, they work better within Synapse, but having a 9-inch Synapse range could be helpful. Again, a lot of these stratagems do rely on being within Synapse. Now he's also going to be applying the assault keywords for nearby units, so those shooter units, exocrines, I always get that wrong, Zoanthropes, Tyranid warriors potentially, they're all going to have the assault keyword so they can advance and still fire. And he's got plenty of war gear options as well, because he's pretty much a build your own tyrant, isn't he? Reasonable damage output, strength 9. So yeah, as far as Tyranids go in melee, that is not quite as good as it gets, but not far off it. So that's the first selection. Number 2, I've gone with Neurogons. Neurogons are cheap and cheerful. They're doing virtually 0 damage output, but they're not there for the damage output. 11 models, or 22 models for 19 flat, which is also a good bargain in my opinion. You've got the Endless Swarm stratagem if you wanted to use a stratagem on them, which gives them, for 1 CP, you can bring back D3 plus 3 models, which is okay. I mean, it's not as good as the Unending Swarm stratagem to bring back a whole unit, but if we're in the Invasion Fleet, that's an option for the Endless Multitude units. Now they're going to act as a Synaptic Extender. So it's a little bit like a Wi-Fi extension. If you guys have got Wi-Fi, I'm sure you have, and there's some like black spots within your home, or within your office, or wherever you are, and it's not getting any Wi-Fi, not getting any broadband. So you go and buy like an extender, put it somewhere else in your house or office, and then voila, it's gained Wi-Fi, Synapse basically. This is what these things are, the little beacon just to extend the Wi-Fi. I literally said Wi-Fi. But what I like about them most is the fact that they've got their own large footprint. 22 models is a very large footprint, especially if you're making maximum use of unit coherency. 2 inches away from 2 models within the unit to stay within coherency, that can spread out to be quite a large area. So that makes them a fantastic anti-deep strike unit, just a great screening unit. Maybe it's just defending a castle, defending an opponent's units getting onto an objective and so on. They can also be led by a Neuro Tyrant, which gives them a +1 to hit and maybe a +1 to wound. I'm not too bothered about that, to be honest. 22 attacks, whatever. Yeah, that's the second selection I've gone with today. Number 3, one of my personal favourites is Raveners. I love Raveners. Feels very gamey at the moment, especially with secondary objective cards. I mean, one of my favourite abilities It's being able to remove a unit from the battlefield in my opponent's turn and then bring them back on in my movement phase. These guys have got deep strike, so they're going to be coming back anywhere 9 inches away from enemy models, which is amazing. But the scoring potential is so high with Raveners. A unit of 3 of them is just 75 points, and you keep using that death from below ability every single turn, every single battle round. And I've said this in previous videos, but what I love about this is you take them away on your opponent's turn. Start in your command phase, you're getting some new secondary cards if you've already done your previous ones or burnt them or whatever. So there you go, you got your new secondary cards. You now know what you need to do, and the Raveners are there to pretty much do it. Now you can even use this in turn 1. You can use the death from below ability turn 1 if your opponent does go first, which is crazy good. I mean, the Leviathan mission pack rule thing, the little pamphlet that you get, it actually says in there that you can't deep strike turn 1 or you can't come in from reserves turn 1, but this rule does not apply for units that actually start on the battlefield. The only reason that a lot of people can't do it is because there's no way of entering them back in. Normally it's strategic reserves, but strategic reserve starts turn 2. These guys do have a way in, they do have a way in with deep strike, so therefore you can technically bring these guys back in turn 1 into a better location. That's only if you start them on the battlefield though, of course. If you're starting them in reserves, no, you can't do that. So yeah, we've kind of already spoken about those secondaries. Those secondaries will include, behind enemy lines, engaging all fronts, the 2 distant corners for investigate signal, jumping on, capture enemy outpost, cleanse, things like that. They can be dealing with that. Damage wise, they're fine. They've got 7 twin linked attacks per Ravener. Only strength 5 -1 AP, but if you add sustain hits 1 from the detachment roll potentially, you're going to be getting a lot more there. You can use the Adrenal Surge for 5+ critical hit rolls, which is going to combo quite nicely with your sustained hits. And then you can also turn on maybe Precision if you're using the Predatory Imperative stratagem, so you can turn on another Imperative. So against that same unit, maybe it is an infantry character, you can turn on Precision and bang, he's gone. Now you come stock with a ranged weapon with these guys, or you can switch that out for a better save, so you've got some options. And lastly, the Overrun stratagem for a better piling and consolidation move, or in fact Death Frenzy to fight on death. Both can work here with Raveners. So that's my next option. Going on to my 4th one is Zoanthropes. Not everybody's liking Zoanthropes anymore, but I still really do like them. Firstly, we need to mention that Synapse keyword, which is going to be crucial for a lot of these stratagems that require Synapse or within Synapse range. They're also putting a lot of her out at range with their Warp Blast. I mean, they've got 2 profiles, anti-infantry, anti-tank. You've got the option to switch it up as you go, which is nice. And that's also kind of semi-works with your detachment rule as well, because, I mean, the focus fire already has lethal hits, but the sustain hits one part of the detachment rule could be really useful. Then you can turn on the critical hits on a 5+, as we mentioned in some previous entries, with Adrenal Surge as an option as well. So lots of things you can do with Zoanthropes. I think they're a very good part of this Tyranid Codex. Finally, another good unit here, it's Gargoyles. Gargoyles are great, another Endless Multitude unit. So again, they can make use of the Endless Swarm stratagem to bring back D3+3. Now what I like about these guys is not only their speed, I mean they're moving rapid, but it's their speed and abilities combined, along with deep strike. I mean you deep strike in or use 12 inches of movement, but after they've made their shots, they're going to move a further 6 inches. So after doing a deep strike move potentially 9 inches away from enemy models, you take some shots, you then move 6 inches towards the objective, you could potentially get onto the objective, or maybe you've cleared some models off the objective as well. You've got OC2 on top of that with Gargoyles. You can literally capture enemy outpost from as soon as they enter. It's really strong, that ability. I mean, for only 80 points for 10 models, they shoot reasonably well. I mean, it's strength 5 with Assault as well. Assault was another thing. They could advance and fire if you're on foot. So moving 12 and advancing, then shooting, then moving a further 6. There's a lot of movement there. There's a lot of movement. So secondary objectives like deploy teleport homers or cleanse, for example, they can be doing that from just the 12-inch movement alone. But we've got a lot of great scoring units within this codex. This is probably one of the best, and OC2 definitely does help. So that's the invasion fleets. That's the 5 names I've gone with for this detachment. We've got some noteworthy mentions for you. We've got Biovores. We can be throwing out those spore mines, because because they can be scoring behind enemy lines and things like that. You've got the non-emissary. I think non-emissary is a pretty decent monster at the moment. Turn on OT15. We'll probably see the non-emissary at some point in this video anyway. Malceptors are really good. Exocrine, they're really good. To be honest, most units, if not all units, work with this detachment. It's a really strong detachment for pretty much anything that you want or anything that you've got hold of. So let's move into the next one, which is Crusher Stampede. Now this is the big monster detachment where you get a +1 to hit if you are under full strength and a +1 to wound if you're below half strength, which will apply to any monsters within your list. So let's kick this off with my first selection today, which is the Malceptor. Malceptor's got a ton of wound, it's a monster, so that's the first reason, of course, that's one of the main reasons in fact. Secondly, it's got Synapse, which is going to be helpful for a number of reasons really. Thirdly, it's a monster that hits on 3s naturally, not 2s. A lot of the monsters do hit on 2s. Malceptors hit on 3s, which means it's going to make max use of the detachment roll, or +1 to the hit roll, as soon as it's taken any damage whatsoever. And then potentially a +1 to wound as well, which is nice. Now it is slightly pricey at 170 points, but it can shoot as well as fight, so it's going to be benefiting from the detachment roll in 2 separate phases, the shooting phase and the fight phase, which is good. I mean, it's got extra bonus points because it's got a debuff ability, which is the direct opposite of our detachment roll. In fact, it's a -1 to hit if under full strength and a -1 to wound if under half strength for your opponent's units. So yeah, that's my number 1 pick, is the Malceptor. Number 2, I've gone with the Horospex. Another monster that hits on 3s this is in fact. So full use of the detachment roll again. It's mainly melee though, so it's only using the fight phase realistically. It does have a shooting attack, but it's only got sort of 1 shot with it, with the tongue. In most detachments, a Horospex is an absolute bargain. It's only 125 points for a monster. You can get full rerolls with it, with the Rampaging Monstrosities stratagem for 1 CP. I mean, it's such a brawler of a monster that you can just compete with any objective in the no man's land and it's going to do work. Anti-infantry in particular, it's just ruining infantry models. It's pretty tanky in general. I mean, that Ravenous Maw it's got is strength 7, potentially with a +1 to wound on top of that, meaning intercessors could be getting hit and wounded on 2s with your 14 attacks. That's just with the Ravenous Maw alone. So yeah, massive objective bully, the Horospex. Number 3, I've gone with a Trigon. Trigons are very good. I mean, it's yet another one that hits on 3s in terms of monsters, and it's both range and melee, so it's good for two phases there. Now what I like about the Trigon is that ability to deep strike 3 inches away from enemy models. Now you're not going to be able to charge, but it's great for breaching into enemy grounds. Again, it could be capture enemy outpost, or just being a total nuisance in general. Now it can't charge, as we said, when doing so, but once it does get into the action, it does have 12 strength 9 attacks with 3 damage a pop. 12 attacks is brutal. It is brutal. So if anything wants to charge it, it's going to hit back and hit back hard, because now the detachment rule comes into play. Now what you can also do is use a Savage Roar stratagem for 1 CP. That means your enemy is going to have a -1 to hit it. It's also going to force Battle Shock, so if they do fail that, there's going to be a -1 to wound as well, which is huge on a toughness 10 model. Then we come on to my 4th pick, which is, again, we've gone with a Hive Tyrant. The land Hive Tyrant. Again, you've got Will of the Hive Mind for free stratagem with battle tactic stratagems. Again, he's granting the assault keyword. We kind of went over that earlier on. So it's going to be helping your big shooting monsters this time. Exocrine, Tyrannifexes this time potentially. Again, it's got Synapse, that's helpful. War gear options, but what I like is that Monstrous Nemesis enhancement for 25 points, a +1 to win versus monsters and vehicles. Now this is a semi-counterproductive enhancement because it kind of goes against the detachment rule, but you're going to have this from minute 1. From turn 1, you're going to have a +1 to win against monsters and vehicles. You don't need to wait until the Hive Tyrant is below half wounds. He's just got it all the time, which is pretty cool when he's got strength 9. You can also use the Ominous Presence for 15 points as an optional enhancement to turn your OC from 3 to 6, which is nice as well. And then number 5, the Non-Emissary. This thing does hit on 2s naturally, so it won't take full advantage of the detachment rule, but it can shoot, it can fight, so the +1 to wound part of the detachment rule will be very useful. It's got options of either re-rolling all the hits and wounds against a selected target, or just simply have OC 15 and 5+4 no pain save on a certain location. I love taking that, I love picking that. It knows where it needs to go, it just camps out on that objective. OC 15 is plenty, 5+4 no pain save is brilliant. You've normally got to pay for that. I mean, it is an expensive model, but it's all inbuilt now. It's got a 2+ armor, 4+ invulnerable save, toughness 11, 16 wounds, on top of now a 5+4 no pain save if you've selected it. Absolute beast, no one's going to mess with it. So that's the 5 options I've gone with in terms of Crusher Stampede. Noteworthy mentions here for the Exocrine. Don't know how this didn't get on the list really, the Exocrine's really good. And a Tyrannofex as well, which is cheaper now with the new points decreases. Unending Swarm is next. We are going to start with Gargoyles again. Gargoyles are going to be here in a lot of these detachments because they're just one of the best units in the codex. No surprises there then. They're of course an endless multitude unit, so that's going to work perfectly with the Unending Swarm detachment. We should probably mention what the Unending Swarm detachment is. You get to use a surge move as soon as you lose a model within your unit in your opponent's shooting phase. So you roll a dice and you can move that many inches just after losing that model. Now we've already mentioned the shenanigans they can do after shooting with their extra movement of 6 inches, but with that surge move on top in your opponent's turn, these things are just getting wherever they want to go, no matter what. I mean, they can also take a winged Tyranid Prime as well, which I didn't really mention previously in this video, so they can gain sustained hits from that, but within the Unending Swarm detachment that is. And there's also a stratagem called Swarming Masses, but you also get critical hits on a 5+ if your unit count is 15 or more models. Defo a top pick in this detachment. Number 2, I'm going with Termagants. No surprises again, another bug unit, another endless multitude unit. Again, you can take them in 20s. They're on the cheaper side of 60 points per 10. OC2, which I love, there's a decent amount of range options. I mean, there's a whole list of weapons that these things can take now. They've got the Shulking Horrors, which is an ability that they've got once per turn. When an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fallback move within 9, they can effectively do a normal move up to D6. Again, this is on top of surge moves as well. So this is just their move in your opponent's movement phase, and then you're doing a surge move in your opponent's shooting phase. So again, a lot of movement from these units in this detachment. I mean, they're only moving 6 inches naturally, so they're not anywhere near as quick as Gargoyles, of course. But even for little bug infantry units, that's still a decent amount of movement. But yeah, really solid, and especially solid alongside the next pick in this detachment, which is the Tervagon. Now that Tervagon, Big Mama, alongside your Termagants, she'll be bringing back D3+3 per turn. That's just ability. Just instantly brings them back or respawns them, whatever you want to say. Now she's also granting lethal hits to all Termagant units within 6 inches, which is nice, but most importantly, she's a much needed Synapse bubble, so anything within Synapse will be using 3 dice for their leadership, for that extra boost within Synapse. She's toughness 11, 2+ armor with 16 wounds, which is very tanky, and she's providing a reasonable damage output with the massive crushing claws and the massive scything talons. So definitely something to think about if you're taking a lot of Termagants. Take Termagant as well. Number 4, we've got Hormagaunts. I always get it wrong way around. It's Gaunts, isn't it? Hormagaunts. Termagants. Why can't they just be the same? Right, Hormagaunts. Another unit that is an Undying Legions. Undying Legions? Where the hell am I? Another unit that's got the Endless Multitude keyword, OC2. Very similar to Termagants. But that surge move is just as important, if not more important, for the Hormagaunts, because you want these things to engage and tie up, bog down whilst also scoring. You can use that surge move to get within engagement range as well, don't forget, which is exactly where the Hormagaunts want to be. Now the Unending Wave stratagem is 2 CP within this attachment. You can bring back an entire Endless Multitude unit once they've been destroyed. So your opponent seeing 20 Gaunts come back costing 130 points is just going to give them nightmares really. They've just defeated it, spent a load of shooting to get rid of it, and then you just bring them back just like that. They've also got the ability to advance and charge. Again, this is after all the surge moves and stuff, so they're pretty rapid as well. And their movement, let me just double check their movement. I believe they are quicker. They're like 10, yeah. They are 10 inches, very rapid. And there's an auto advance stratagem as well, bounding advance. So you're definitely going to be advancing. You could go 6 inches with that stratagem. That's 16 inches in total. That's before any surge moves have happened in your opponent's turn. then make a charge. Beautiful. Then number 5 in this detachment, the Neuro Tyrant. The Neuro Tyrant lacks a bit of synapse with the main unit, so we've gone with the Neuro Tyrant to bring some synapse in. I mean, not only does it have synapse, but it also can select 2 units within 18, and then they can go off. Even though they're well out of synapse range, they're going to remain within synapse for the remainder of that turn, which is going to be really key on models that have got 2 OC, like your bugs, your little termagants, hormagaunts. They're going to really need that synapse, especially if they start losing models. They want to keep that OC2, keep hold of those objectives. It's also a character, don't forget, so you could use the enhancements, although they're not that great in this detachment, but you've got the options there. Maybe you could use the naturalized camouflage to get some early cover saves for your bugs. Well, it's just small bugs anyway. But that's my 5th pick in the Unending Swarm. So we've got some special shout outs for the Neurogons. Did we mention Neurogons? I don't think we did. Special shout out for the Neurogons because, of course, they not only can go with that Neuro Tyrant, but they're going to be that extension of Synapse, and they are Endless Multitude, so they could have been selected here. The Swarm Lord is a noteworthy mention as well. I know he's expensive, but this is quite a CP heavy detachment, especially if you're using the ending wave stratagem for 2 CP. So you're going to need CP, and the Swarm Lord is a way to farm CP. Let's move into number 3, which is the Assimilation Swarm. They've got the Feed the Swarm ability, detachment rule even, and you basically select a harvester unit that's on an objective or within range of an objective that you control, and you can regenerate friendly units within 6 inches. So it's either going to be one model can regain D3 lost wounds, or you just simply bring back 1 infantry model within a unit, and if it's Endless Multitude, you bring back 3 models. So you are required to use a harvester unit and be on an objective that you are controlling in order to do that. It's quite a lot of things need to happen for that to happen, but let's get into it. The first one, of course, Horospex. Horospex is a great unit in any detachment. We said this earlier in this video, but he does also have the Harvester keyword, which is crucial for this detachment rule. He's also pretty tanky, so if he's on an objective, which he should be holding, he can make use of his toughness 11, 14 wounds, be in control of the objective, be a harvester unit, so be healing any units around him. In fact, the rule could just apply to himself, so he can regain D3 lost wounds every turn to itself, which is great. Now for 2 CP, you can use the Ablative Carapace for 4+4 no pain save, whilst on that objective as well, and we already know it's an infantry eater for just 125 points. That's pick number 1. Pick number 2, probably the pick of the bunch, in fact, Ripper Swarms. Probably the best unit in this detachment. You can take them in singles for 20 points, dirt cheap. 20 points, they're harming OC for enemy units, but that's not their main trick. Their main trick really, well, first of all, Deep Strike. Deep Strike in a single base, fantastic. I mean, they've got no OC, but it'd be great for secondary objectives behind enemy lines, teleport homers, engaging all fronts, things like that. They're not going to need to shoot and charge, so they may as well do those actions to score some secondaries. But the most important part is they're a harvester unit. They've got that keyword, and they're a cheap one as well. So a cheap way to heal other units around it if you gain the objective or have the objective with another unit potentially. But what I really love about these guys is there's a stratagem within this detachment, Broodguard Impulse. Just 1 CP. Anything that kills this easily killed Ripper will now face a +1 to wound versus our entire army. Our entire list, +1 to wound against that unit that killed this 20-point Ripper Swarm or Ripper base. 1 single CP. So you just literally spam that. Anytime a Ripper Swarm goes down, it has to be a different turn, of course. Yeah, brutal. Now, unfortunately, it's not a battle tactic stratagem, it's an epic deed, so if you did have a Hive Tyrant, you couldn't be reusing that stratagem, so it will be once per turn. But you just throw a Ripper Swarm at them once per turn, it dies. Now, you use it, and then a +1 to wound from then onwards. Love it. Number 3, sorry, we've got the Psychophage. Not a massive fan of the Psychophage, if I'm honest with you, but it does have the Harvester keyword. It's the 3rd unit within this list that does have it, out of the 4. It is a monster, so it can use its Torrent and engagement range, which I like. It provides a 6+4 no pain save for nearby units, which is handy. It's pretty good against Psychers. You don't always come up against Psychers, but when you do, these are great. These are genuinely great. But really, the reason you're taking the Psychophage is if you've already got 3 units of Rippers, you've already got 3 units of Horospexes, and maybe the 4th unit, which we haven't spoke about yet, then you can go on to the Psychophage to be bringing more Harvester units within your list. Now it is a touch on the light side with its durability, and it does cost the same as a Horror Specs, which feels a little bit overpriced. But yeah, if you need more Harvester units, that should go too. Then number 4, we've got the Pyrovore, which is the 4th Harvester unit and the final one in fact, so there's only 4 in total. 35 points a pop, so another cheap option like Ripper Swarms. Not the quickest, so they're likely going to be staying back in your deployment zone, potentially moving out into the no man's land if you wanted to. The Flame Spur is a pretty decent little anti-infantry torrent, which also removes cover from that unit for everything else that's firing at it. And like Ripper Swarms, you can use that Broodguard Impulsive, so a +1 to wound if it's killed. 35 point model, it will go down at some point, not as easy as Rippers do, but you've got the option there. But the best stratagem I like to use with the Pyrovores is the Tyranniform stratagem. For 1 CP, you can make an objective sticky, which means you can simply move off your home objective and move up the battlefield into the no man's land if you wanted to. But remember, we do need to hold objectives and be within range of an objective to be using that Feed the Swarm ability, so just bear that one in mind if you are making sticky objectives. Number 4, this one's a little bit of a left field pick. We've gone with Zoanthropes. They're not going to gain much from the Detachment rule. They've of course not got the Feed the Swarm Harvester keyword ability thing. However, they are infantry, so when you are using Harvester units to heal infantry in particular, like Zoanthropes, they're just going to bring an entire model back. There's no D3 wounds return, it's just bring a whole model back. Now, Zoanthropes are 3 wounded models at toughness 5 with a 4+ in vulnerable save, and they're quite expensive. So that's going to be really great to just keep bringing them back. I mean, their range damage output is massive as well. They've also got Synapse, which is also pretty good. So that's my 5 I've gone with the Assimilation Swarm. Noteworthy mentions, I mean, you could add Tyranid Warriors because they're also infantry with 3 wounds, so very similar reasons to Zoanthropes. They're not as durable as Zoanthropes, but you could add them into the noteworthy mentions. Possibly Raveners again, as they're also infantry, and Raveners have got 3 wounds as well. But I think it would be the Zoanthropes in this occasion. Next we've got the Vanguard Onslaught Detachment, so you can have Death Leapers as your Warlord, but the main rule is being able to advance and charge with the Vanguard Invader units. So if they've got the Vanguard Invader keyword, they are Vanguard Invader unit. You'll probably see quite a lot of these entries with that keyword. Number 1, of course, Death Leaper. Death Leaper, he's now your new Warlord of the fleet. He's just good in general. I mean, I've not really given him noteworthy mentions throughout this video so far, but really I probably should have. He's one of the best HQ's characters within this codex, in fact, because of how cheap it is. I mean, it's 80 points and you're getting fights first, you're getting infiltrators, lone operatives, stealth, precision with your weapon, you're causing battle shock, you're gaining CP if you remove characters. Now you're advancing and charging because of the detachment rule on top. It's an infantry model, so you can make use of terrain. There's so much you can do with a Death Leaper. 80 points is an absolute steal. Absolute steal. The second unit on this list is the Gene Stealers. I might be cheating a little bit here. I might add the Gene Stealers as well as the Broodlord as an entry, but if not, if you don't like that, I'll just say Gene Stealers. I mean, they've got the Scout 8-inch movement, which is lovely. Then they advance and charge, so they're a great alpha strike kind of unit. If you do have the Broodlord within the unit, you're going to gain devastating wounds and a -1 to enemies' hit rolls. That's great there. But the Gene Stealers themselves, they reroll 1s naturally, and they're hit not 2s, so rerolling, well, hit not 2s, rerolling 1s is great. They also could be rerolling 1s to wound if they're on an objective. These guys got the Vanguard Invader keywords, so they can make use of all the stratagems. One in particular I like is Assassin Beasts. Assassin Beasts basically gives them precision. When you've got all those attacks, if you're not going to quite finish a unit but that has a character within it, kill the character, just get rid of it first. Just make sure all those buffs are gone. But yeah, that is my next pick in this detachment, the Gene Stealers and the Broodlord. Number 3, Gargoyles again. We're going to see the Gargoyles yet again. They've got the Vanguard Invader keyword as well. Is there any keywords they don't have? They seem to have everything. There's a great stratagem in there for these deep striking Gargoyles, which is Seeded Broods, which effectively means they can be set up from deep strike in turn 1, just for 1 CP. Because the turn will be counted as if it was one after, so it will effectively be like it's turn 2 even though it's only turn 1. So get them in there turn 1, Again, the shoot and then move ability. You could capture enemy outpost literally turn 1 if you've got a space for it. That's madness. You could force battle shock test for 1 CP with surprise assault. So you'll get a +1 to your hit rolls with your range attacks and maybe a +1 to wound if they failed the test. But if they do fail the test, all the OC that they've got, the objective control that an enemy unit has got, will be gone, which could be critical, especially that these guys have got OC too. Let's move on to another one because we spoke about gargoyles quite a lot in this video already. Vanguard Onslaught Detachment, unit number 4, Parasite of Mortrex. One of my little favourite characters within this codex, in fact. Again, has the Vanguard Invader keyword. It's a character. It's got Deep Strike, Lone Operative, Stealth, again just 80 points, again so cheap. You've got the option of enhancements now because it is a character, so Hunting Grounds is an option here to force battle shock tests on enemies that are entering from reserves. So if you're going up against my Necrons with the Hypercrypt Legion and I keep popping them in and out, I'm not going to like that one bit. They can also create Rippers, which we all know that Rippers are pretty decent in general. But the thing I like about these guys is the scoring potential. You drop them in from Deep Strike, potentially turn 1 with the Seeded Brood stratagem that we mentioned with the Gargoyles, and you could be scoring secondaries right from the off. You've then got the Invisible Hunter stratagem, which I love even more so, because you can literally pull them off the battlefield in your opponent's turn, end of your opponent's turn, put them back into reserves, and then re-Deep Strike in your next turn. So again, you're going to see your cards and go, now I need to do Investigate Signal. I need to get the corners. I don't have that corner. I know, Parasite or Mortrex can go there. There's a space. Lovely. So yeah, Parasite is my number 4, and my 5th and final option for Vanguard Onslaught is the Neurolictor. Yet another Vanguard Invader unit, of course. It's got Infiltrators, it's got Lone Operative, Stealth. It's also got Shadow in the Warp, even though it's not a character. Doesn't have Synapse. Its weapons have Precision in melee. Now, not only does it cause Battle Shock, but if it does Battle Shock the unit, not only is it getting a -1 to hit, we're also going to get a +1 to wound army-wide against that selected battle shocked unit as well. So it's a great buff for us and a great debuff for them. And they've also lost OC and stratagem use as well, which is pretty cool. Now there's other ways of getting those buffs and debuffs, in fact. You don't need to necessarily use his ability. You could use, for example, Surprise Assault. Surprise Assault, 1 CP, force a battle shock test in shooting or fight phase. That could be a way of making them fail within 12. You naturally get a +1 to hit when you're using that stratagem, and if they are battle shocked, a +1 to wound again. So if your Neuro Disruption ability does fail, you've got a plan B with this stratagem. Now, Neurolictors are fairly tough in general for what they are. Toughness 5, 4+ invulnerable save, 7 wounds. Again, only 80 points, which seems to be the magic number in this detachment for single models. So that's the 5 I've gone with the Vanguard Onslaught. Noteworthy mentions, I've got the Lictors there for similar reasons to the Neurolictor. We've got the Von Ryan's Leapers. They've got all those Fight First and Infiltrators abilities. And I thought I'd put a Flying Hive Tyrant as well. Flying Hive Tyrant is a Vanguard Onslaught character with Synapse as well, and a lot more tankier because it's a Tyrant. So I thought that would be a noteworthy mention for this detachment. Right, I don't know what number we're on now. Is it the last one? Synaptic Nexus, that is the last one. So we're going to go with the Synaptic Imperative first. Let's explain the detachment rule. So you've got 3 options here. You get selected at the start of each battle round. You're either going to get a 5+ invulnerable save, a +1 to your advance and charge, or you're going to get a +1 to the hit rolls. They only last until the end of the battle round, so 2 of the battle rounds aren't going to have anything. So let's get on with it. The first one I've gone with is the Neuro Tyrant. Now this detachment is all about Synapse. It's all about Synapse. And the thing that brings it the most in terms of Synapse is the Neuro Tyrant. Not only does it have its own Synapse, but it can be using its Neuraloids to continue Synapse from afar. Beautiful. They're also going to be able to debuff enemy lists when you're using Shadow in the Warp. And it also applies a -1 to those tests as well. Shadow in the Warp can be quite nasty at the right time. If your opponent loses OC on units, yeah, it literally can swing a game in terms of your scoring, especially your primaries. Now, the Psychic Scream is nice as an anti-infantry weapon, but the Neuro Tyrant alone is just 105 points. It's quite cheap, and for all that Synapse, it's not bad at all. Number 2, we've got the Malceptor, which was near the start of the video now, so it's been a while since we spoke about the Malceptor. Again, it's a Synapse model, which of course is important for this detachment. 2 out of 3 of those imperatives that we mentioned are going to be useful because you're going to get into melee with it. So you're going to get that +1 to the charge, and also the +1 to the hit in melee. That's going to be useful for the Maleceptor, but the invulnerable save, not so much, because it's already got its own. Now you could use the Imperative Dominant stratagem for 1 CP to reuse an imperative that's already been used. So if you really did want to get a +1 to the hit roll for whatever reason, and it wasn't turned on for that battle round, you can still do so for 1 CP. And you've got extra damage from the Smothering Shadow stratagem, which will throw out mortal wounds from a Synapse unit, which it is. So that's the next one. Number 3, Zoanthropes again. I love my Zoanthropes. Now again, these guys don't gain much from this detachment rule. They've already got the in-man save. They don't want to be in melee. They don't want to be within engagement range. They don't want to be charging. They don't gain much at all from the detachment rule. However, they've got Synapse. And there's 2 stratagems in fact that work really well with Zoanthropes that I want to mention in this video. The first is Irresistible Will, to give rerolls of 1s to hit and to wound to units within Synapse. It's got its own Synapse, it's always going to be within Synapse. Now this one's a battle tactic stratagem as well, so if you've got a Hive Tyrant nearby, it could be a freebie. But rerolling 1s to hit and 1s to wound is nice. You've also got Override Instincts for 1 CP to be able to fall back and shoot. So if they do get tagged, of course that is their weakness. If you tag them, they're pretty much redundant. They can't fire within engagement range. But Override Instincts allows them to fall back and still shoot, which is very key. Next we've got the Northern Emissary again. We spoke about him earlier as well, or him, her, it, whatever it is. We spoke about it in the Crusher Stampede mainly, really. Provides Synapse again, so all the stratagems can be applied to a Northern Emissary. It can shoot, it can fight. Doesn't mind getting into engagement range. Doesn't really need the in-1 save from the detachment rule. I won't mind the extra charge move as well as the +1 to hit. I suppose the +1 to hit isn't actually useful either, is it? Because it hits on 2s. But I just love the OC15. I love the Feel No Pain save. It's got a 2-up armor, 4+ invuln. The Feel No Pain save, if you select it, toughness 11, 16 wounds, Synapse. Synapse is the main party piece, I think, for this detachment. And then finally we've got Tyranid Warriors, another Synapse unit that can fight in melee. So they're going to make use of all of those detachment rules that we spoke about earlier, all the imperatives, the in-1 save, the extra charge, and the +1 to hit in melee, all useful for Tyranid Warriors. They could be led by a winged Tyranid Prime, so they can gain Sustained Hits 1 if they want. They're doing a little bit of work in melee in fact with their Tyranid Warrior Claws and Talons. They're twin linked at strength 5, minus 2 AP, 1 damage. But you're gonna have the +1 to hit, so hitting on 2s, or you have the in-1 save. But then you've got their ability as well. So at the start of the fight phase, you're either going to get to reroll all your hit rolls of a 1. So hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s is kind of nice. Or they get to reroll 1s for their save and throw, which I think the other option is better. The more aggressive option, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s is nice. You've then got the reinforced Hive Node stratagem for 1 CP, just for the extra 1 AP in melee. It's not a massive stratagem, but it puts their Claws and Talons to minus 3 AP, which I think is a big deal, from minus 2 AP. So that's the 5 I've gone with the Synaptic Nexus. You could probably throw in there again Nora Gaunts for the extra Synapse extension, and maybe the Hive Tyrant as well, of course, for the Will of the Hive Mind, another Synapse monster that can assist with Synapse in general. So guys, that is my top 5 units from each detachment within the Tyranids Codex. Let me know yours down in the comments below. Of course, we've all got different metas, different play styles. This is mine. Let me know yours down below.